大家早安。
Good morning, everyone.
大家안달인데 안에 시르님 뷰기 순수샤 니마 타마르 차디요래.
今天呢是我们信心课程的最后一天。
안드레인 다리 안지 초 가스가네 지 다른분의 안미 망부치 다리데 가상 권도 주변은 신 당부체비나 안미 망부들이 요하기 셔시 미세게요 만에 가라스나 미만아 안에 다시 욕도 망하듯이 섬으로 자সম으로지 용유자 안더 민유뉴를 채나스 이렇게 정말에 다이네 아니 제래야 지 토나친게 미 망부슈지 도스드네 인두사나 아니 아주기 에네 미 장보로디 야 빠르체 장가데 야 빠르체 아니 납제스웨레 디 제래야 양가 빠체 아주 둥게스웨입니다. 간다야다 간다르 지미 망부슈지게 가주레 도나치지 미세 순주슈야 체도 데 용브레 안정아랑 원에 비냐 안 가서 두두루치 마 에지 슈야기 베즈르 체제 안다다 다 순주인디 줄레냐를 차리와래.
那么我们这一次的课程也可以看到，来自各个地方的远道而来了这么多的学员们。那么就像在第一天好像有跟大家提到过，本来的计划是没有开放这么多的名额，没有说要这么多人来参加。那因为如果太多人的时候，在整个这个安排上也是会比较麻烦，是不太容易。所以当时我们是想说，不要那么多人，大概是1千人。但是发现这个报名越来越多。
So I didn't expect there to be so many participants, and the number of people who signed up kept increasing. So at first it was 300, and then it went up to 500, and now this is close to 700. So I try my very best in these few days to teach you. And today we're almost close to its completion.
안드레데 다 가사 쇼베 아니 동이 시골 셰베 겁리야 지 우마베기 단 두주세네 자도 야나 우마베지 드시 겹단로디 슈아기 두주 총모마도베 아니 샘점바당 안 디싱이 부마와 다시 현동베 두주단 드시 겹단 디 슈아기 두주 머종래 지상한 카셰기 샘점바당 안 디싱이 부마에긴 두주디 드시 겹투나 안 페도 용사레사르 드시잉에르 용도 제상 안님 당보 지 디링기 죄셔디 무슨 공부수 권리야 가상기 돈이 시고라는 저 토네 엔 심선바당 디진님만 두주 노주 샤이.
Last morning, we saw the full emptiness, but because of time, I wasn't able to talk more about how emptiness is explained in Madhyamaka. So I also didn't have the time to explain mind-only school thoughts. Then after that, some people said that I should continue to explain this part so they could help people better understand it. So today, before I enter the sutra, I would roughly talk about mind only, and Madhyamaka, and how they explain emptiness.
다르네 지진기 추든디기 죄자디 슈트베 젤이야 다간다 시진 실험님부터 슈트베 젤이야 안 가장디 겸주치기 있으니 겸주 쇼고 있으니 가시 용어도 제가 되게 들려야 제리신도 겸주쳐야 돼 뒤주매의 인상 드린데 냠도 아니 겸주 도도 쉬어야 겸주도 봐 도두지마 저건 도두지만 돼야 도시 안디 쇼들이야 아니 시럽 님부기 롱도지 아다지 베게 토알이야 야게 돌미세 롱도도 개요만에 또 이네 베게 토알이야 아주 롱규르지 대하를 위에 인두산에 디균셀 되네 아니 베게 토안에 시럽 님부기 롱 도두지 쉐이 단 도두세나 딱한다 시럽 님부 롱 쉐이 텔런도 기두샤 개면도
So after the explanation at the end of the lesson today, because some people have asked me to give refuge vows, so at the end of the class today, I will roughly hold a refuge ceremony, because today there's really very limited time, and so there's no way whereby I can give each one of you refuge vows. So at the end of the class, we will have a refuge ceremony, and after that, I'll give the transmission of the Heart Sutra, because it is in Tibetan. So because I have the Tibetan oral transmission, so I'll give it to you in Tibetan, because I don't have the one in Chinese. So yesterday we talked about the fourfold emptiness in the Heart Sutra. The fourfold emptiness is the essence of the Prajna Sutras, and Prajna Sutras is the root foundation of all of Mahayana thought, and therefore the main three sects of Mahayana, that is the Madhyamaka, mind-only school, and the Chittamatra. And each one of them talk about the relationship amongst the emptiness of various things. Although there are three sects, but they are all under the Mahayana Buddhism. Therefore, you cannot say who is more superior. You cannot differentiate. You cannot say there's anyone is more superior. There's no differentiation. There appear to be three different sects. It is just all to help us in clearing away our afflictions. In Madhyamaka school, we have already discussed quite a bit of it yesterday. In summary, Madhyamaka school believe that form is emptiness, these four lines, they explain that all things, all phenomena, their nature is illusory. It is like the image of a moon on the water surface. So although you see the image of the moon, however, it is illusory. It manifests, but it is not real. Emptiness and everything, they are the two sides of one thing. This is the thought of the Madhyamaka school. Next is the mind-only school. The mind-only school believes that form is emptiness. Those 4 lines refers to the fact that all things themselves don't have a problem. But what our problem is that we have added onto it mistaken views, mistaken concepts. And these concepts are not real, not logical. But the thing itself, it continues. It doesn't have any problem. It is like mistaking a rope as a snake. The snake that you saw doesn't exist. But the rope remains a rope. There's no problem with that too. The Chittamatra school comes about after Madhyamaka school, because many people, after hearing the Madhyamaka view, they mistakenly think that all things have an empty side and therefore do not exist. So Chittamatra school comes to tell us that our problem lies in our misunderstanding. Therefore, we're unable to see the thing in itself. But this does not mean that the thing doesn't exist. Just like what we've emphasized yesterday. So the Chittamatra school believes that the real emptiness is Buddha's wisdom and the wisdom as object. But we do not understand such an object. And we start to think of all kinds of illusions. It is like a person suffering from jaundice, and when they look at a white conch shell, they see it as yellow. So this saying, the difference between this saying and that of mind-only school is that the things that we directly perceive has no problems at all, but it is the labels that we add onto them, the mistaken labels, that are wrong. Whereas the Chittamatra school, it says that all that we see are illusory. It is based on the wrong view that we first start off with and create illusions from. So this is the difference between the mind-only school and the Chittamatra school. In the Chittamatra school, in Tibet, is called Takung Chung. Mahamudra and Vajrayana are closer to the school of thought. It believes that non-dual wisdom is perfect. Its realm and its characteristic is perfect. But we bring along a dualistic kind of point of view, and that is such an illusion is mistaken. Therefore, we just said just now that the differences amongst these schools is to help different sentient beings dissolve their various afflictions. So it is hard to say who is good or who is bad, who is higher or who is lower. It is hard to say. Therefore, it is important for us to understand this point. So let's not care about who is higher, who is lower, and to just focus on learning their teachings. And these will help solve our doubts. Otherwise, many people will say, oh, Madhyamaka is the best. Compared to Madhyamaka, mind-only school doesn't seem to be quite real. However, whether Madhyamaka is good or not, it really depends on yourself. If you truly be inspired by the thinking of Madhyamaka and it has caused you to change and improve, then it is good. If you haven't changed, even if you've learned very, very famous Dharma like Mahamudra, Dzogchen, all of them will be useless. Therefore, in the past, in Tibet, there was a great practitioner. He said that Dharma is Dzogchen is not enough. The person himself needs to become Dzogchen. I feel that this is a very important teaching, so we must remember this in our hearts. Yesterday, we haven't finished talking about the 12 links of interdependent origination, and so today we will continue talking about it. In the sutra, it has been mentioned, no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, up to no aging and death, and no exhaustion of aging and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no cessation, and no path. There is no pristine wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Yesterday, we talked about ordinary foundation and special foundation. The special foundation refers to the 12 links of interdependent origination, Four Noble Truths, and the merit of practice. The 12 links of interdependent origination can be divided into going with the flow of the 12 links or reversing the flow of the 12 links. Going with the flow of the 12 links of interdependent origination explains the causes and process of our suffering in cyclic existence, from birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sutras on discipline record a story on the 12 links of interdependent origination and cyclic existence. In the story, the Buddha manifested as a painter. This painter drew a painting that depicts cyclic existence within the 6 realms. In the center of the painting, there are the symbols of desire, anger, and ignorance: chicken, snake, and pig. In the outer circle of the painting are the symbols of virtuous and non-virtuous acts: 2 paths, a white and a black path. The painting also illustrates how the 12 links work. So, up to today, in many Tibetan Buddhist temples, on their walls, they would paint this painting of Yamantaka, the Lord of Death, biting on the wheel of samsara. In the picture, each of the 12 links has its own picture or symbol. Firstly, ignorance. Ignorance is symbolized by a blind and an old woman holding a walking stick. Secondly, formations, symbolized by a potter creating pottery. Thirdly, consciousness, symbolized by a monkey that had climbed to the top of a tree. Fourth, mind and body, symbolized by a boat with a boatman, or a tent that is inhabited by someone. 5. The six sense bases, symbolized by an empty house with 6 windows, an empty house. 6. Contact between object and senses, symbolized by a kissing couple. 7. Feeling, symbolized by a person who is struck in the eye by an arrow. 8. Craving, symbolized by an alcoholic drinking desperately from a bottle of alcohol. 9. Clinging, symbolized by a monkey plucking fruit from a tree. 10. Becoming, symbolized by a pregnant woman. 11th, birth, symbolized by a woman giving birth to a child. 12. Old age and death, symbolized by an old man carrying a corpse on his back. To put it simply, the 12 links of interdependent origination explains the situation of beings in samsara. Firstly, our ignorance, that is, our wrong perception, leads to many actions, which is the second stage, formations, in the 12 links. Then, because of such behavior, it leads us to being caught involuntarily in samsara, and leads us to have a body and a mind that is form and consciousness. After having a mind and body, we start to have contact with the material world. In the process of such contact, we begin to have various kinds of craving. That leads us to lots of craving, and leads us to the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Reversing the 12 links of interdependent origination is when we hope to be free from the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death, and hence we work in a reverse order of the 12 links to take this process apart. We keep dismantling the process all the way to the first stage, ignorance. This would completely free one from samsara. Now you seem to have seen yourself, right? It seems really familiar, isn't it? The 12 interdependent origination. Next is the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is when the Buddha turned the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma, when he first gave teachings. It is also the core of Buddha's teachings. The Four Noble Truths refer to suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path. Suffering and the cause of suffering explain the cause of suffering, the cause of samsara and its result. The end of suffering and the path explain the cause and result of nirvana. And we just talked about in the 12 links of interdependent origination, it is divided into going with the flow and reversing it. If you follow with the flow, if you follow the flow and you analyze it, you'll be looking at the ground of death and the cessation. No, it's not like that. If you go with the flow of the 12 links, it details the paths of Is it talking about that? It is like that. Next, we talked about the merit of practice. It is referred to in the verse. In the verse, there is no pristine wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. That line. Because those practicing bodhisattvas, they will gradually increase their wisdom, so they will attain realization and eliminate their afflictions. Hence, they have attained pristine wisdom or not attained it. So these are the merits of practice. In contrast with what we talked about, the 5 aggregates, the 12 sense bases, the 18 dhatus, all of which are intimately related to sentient beings and make up the ordinary foundation. It belongs to samsara. The 12 links of interdependent origination, the 4 noble truths, and the merits of practice are the special foundation, so it belongs to nirvana. Hence, those who want to be liberated tend to cling tightly to these. Therefore, we need to recognize that these 12 links of interdependent origination and 4 noble truths are empty. That is to say, not only should one see samsara not only should we not cling to samsara, we should also not cling to nirvana. Shariputra, since bodhisattvas are therefore without attainment, they rely upon and abide within transcendent wisdom. Since the mind is without obscuration, they are without fear, utterly transcending error. They reach the perfection of nirvana. These verses explain the method of training for practitioners on the path. Like what we've mentioned earlier in the morning, what bodhisattvas are training is to continuously develop the wisdom of the bodhisattva on the path of seeing. And hence, yesterday, it should be last morning, hence, for these two, the emptiness that both examine are the same. And so it says here, they rely upon and would gradually be without obscuration, be without fear, and utterly transcending error, and they reach perfection of nirvana. So, how do they train? We need to know how they train. because bodhisattvas on the path of seeing have already seen emptiness, the nature of emptiness. Therefore, these bodhisattvas who are training, their fundamental wisdom will not learn anything more. This is what non-attainment means. And hence, his fundamental wisdom will no longer have any mistaken experiences. In other words, there will no longer be any misunderstanding. This is the bodhisattvas training on the path, and those who rely on the practice of prajna paramita. This would be what they will attain, the perfection of nirvana. Now the next line in the phrase, the mind without obscuration. The word obscuration refers to the obscurations of the mind that affects us, the obscurations that lead us to have many misunderstandings. These obscurations are known as intellectual obscurations. They are known as intellectual obscurations. Bodhisattvas in training start to gradually eliminate these intellectual obscurations. Hence, the phrase, the mind without obscuration. At the same time, a bodhisattva in training and an ordinary being, or a Shravaka and a Prachika Buddha, are not the same. They are able to understand the profound emptiness and are not fearful of such an idea. Hence the phrase, without fear. They are able to accept this completely. As it is hard to accept for Shravakas. They are also able to get rid of the subtlest confusion, and hence the phrase utterly transcending error. And in this way, they will, in the end, attain the perfection of nirvana, because they transcend error, and therefore they attain the perfection of nirvana. Next, all the Buddhas that abide in the three times achieve the unsurpassable, authentic, perfect awakening of manifest perfect Buddhahood by relying on this transcendent wisdom. This line explains the path of no learning. It is the state of Buddhahood. Nagarjuna's disciple, Bodhisattva Aryadeva, once said, that the one thing that will lead a being to the door of liberation is prajna paramita. And this is what makes prajna paramita supreme. All the Buddhas of the three times, whether it is the past or the present or the future, they all rely on such wisdom to attain the unsurpassable Buddhahood. That is, Buddhahood. Here, the prajna paramita is the wisdom of realizing emptiness, which we've repeatedly mentioned. All Buddhas, without exception, rely on such wisdom to attain Buddhahood. Not a single Buddhahood did not practice such wisdom and became a Buddha. Therefore, the phrase three times means no matter whom or when a person attains Buddhahood, this person must rely on such wisdom. The next phrase, unsurpassable, authentic, perfect awakening of manifest perfect Buddhahood. The word awakening is so puti is Buddhahood. So this word of awakening is translated very appropriately because so is it Buddha translated? So the word to awaken, so awakening is very appropriately translated because it carries with it the meaning of waking up. We are right now like in a dreamscape that arose from a misunderstanding. A dreamscape. When we become a Buddha, we completely awaken from this dream. This is the something that Master Yuan Ce said. So over here, the authentic awakening refers to the Buddha's realization. Why the emphasis on authentic here? Because Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas all have realization, but only the Buddha has the authentic realization. So the word authentic here means the perfection of wisdom, a deep understanding of emptiness. As such realization is that of the Buddha, naturally, it is unsurpassable. Hence the word unsurpassable. That is to say that there is no other result or goal that is more supreme than this. So the word unsurpassable. The next word, perfect. Perfect here means being completely free from error. It means not only does he understand the profound truth of things, but his knowledge is also vast and omnipresent. Such understanding, such awakening, only the Buddha has it. Such realization can only be possessed by the Buddha. So, after attaining the perfect Buddhahood, a practitioner would have attained the essence of Dharmakaya and realize thoroughly the truth of all Dharma. In short, the Buddha's perfect realization, such ultimate, penetrating realization of the truth, is attained through relying on Prajnaparamita. And that was the Avalokiteshvara's answer aimed at those of a lower capability. So over here, we should reflect. We've just talked about the 5 paths. Hence, many people will think their own practice, standard. They would ask themselves which path, which standard of their practice have they achieved. Are we already on the path of accumulation, or the path of joining, or the path of seeing, or the path of cultivation? I think it's not that easy. Perhaps we shouldn't have wishful thinking. To enter the path for a beginner, and at the beginning, when you want to start, you need to start with listening, contemplating, taking refuge, and then taking bodhisattva vows, and then after that, then you realize emptiness. So, and then when we rouse bodhicitta at the end, then you start on the path of accumulation. So, according to a Mahayana practice, at this point, the practitioner maintains bodhicitta to absorb and contemplate emptiness as a focus, and that is the path of accumulation. So over here, bodhicitta, the rousing of bodhicitta means you don't have, sorry, the rousing of bodhicitta means we should first practice the methods of mind training in Tibetan Buddhism. The mind here means bodhicitta. And to train in the mind of bodhicitta, you need to train. You need to train. If not, bodhicitta will not be roused. So you need to work very hard to rouse bodhicitta. But in the end, the standard, the level that you will achieve, you'll very naturally, bodhicitta will very naturally arise in your mind. It will naturally arise in your mind, and at that time, you would have entered the path of accumulation. If you haven't, if you're if bodhicitta uncontrived bodhicitta, if you don't have uncontrived bodhicitta, you cannot say that you have started on the path. Like what I said yesterday, to train in bodhicitta is not something that is that easy. If bodhicitta were that easy, then the bodhisattvas wouldn't be known as the courageous ones. In Buddhism, we say that the bodhisattvas are heroes. Why is it that the Shravakas and Pratitya Buddhas, why aren't they called bodhisattvas? Why aren't they called heroes? Because they don't have that kind of courage. They don't have the kind of courage, the very big kind of courage, very courageous. A hero has lots of courage. He can sacrifice himself. So, this kind of courage is not something that everyone has. That is to say, such courage is really hard to get. Therefore, I feel that everyone must practice some more if they want to rouse bodhicitta. Yesterday I've mentioned it already. You need a very strong, you need to really train yourself, train your mind. Then there is a possibility that you'll have such courage. Okay? And that was the answer that Avalokiteshvara answered Shariputra, the first part of it. And that is for those beings with a lower capability. Over here, in this Heart Sutra that we're discussing, is said to be the quintessence of all Prajnaparamita Sutras. There are many reasons for this. Why? Why is it called the quintessence of all Prajnaparamita Sutras? From its structure, the aspect of the main text. In that aspect, it first emphasizes the one question that is the most important to all Mahayana bodhisattvas, and that is how to practice Prajnaparamita. Like what was mentioned earlier, this question is asked from the perspective of the path of practices, like what we've talked about the day before yesterday. Then, Avalokiteshvara first uses the four folds of emptiness, that is, form is emptiness, form is empty, emptiness is form, these four lines, to explain the prajna thought, which is also the Mahayana thought. Following that, it uses the 8 profound meanings to explain how to understand and train in such thought. Then, it magnifies the idea of emptiness by applying it on the 5 aggregates, the 12 sense bases, 18 dhatus, 12 links of interdependent origination, the 4 noble truths, and the merit of practice. Lastly, it emphasizes that all Buddhas relied on the wisdom of emptiness to attain Buddhahood. Such wisdom and such thought, such a sutra, though it is very short, completely penetrates Mahayana Buddhism's ground, path, and fruition. And very clearly laid out and linked the 5 paths of bodhisattvas. It also contains the different parts of the prologue, the aspect of the main text, as well as the aspect of distribution. Therefore, it is a sutra that is very hard to come by. Next, we go on to explain the second part. The part that is aimed at the people with a higher capability. And the lines are Shariputra, because the mantra of transcendent wisdom, the mantra of great awareness, the unsurpassable mantra, the mantra that equals the unequaled, the mantra that utterly pacifies all suffering, is without falsehood and should be known to be truth. It is a secret mantra. This line, by the way, is a line that only occurs in the Chinese version that His Holiness is teaching now. Now, so this part is aimed at those of a high ability. So these beings are able to understand the entire wisdom of Prajna's ground, path, and fruition just by listening to the mantra. So next, the next part will be the mantra. The next part of the sutra is a mantra. I'll be explaining the mantra. Usually, many people will classify mantra under Vajrayana and sutras under Theravada. But the word secret here means that its meaning is very profound. Ordinary beings are unable to understand it, hence it becomes a secret. The mantra is Sanskrit. Man means to understand, and tra means to rescue. Because all Buddhas rely on Prajnaparamita to attain Buddhahood. Therefore, the Prajnaparamita mantra carries with it the meaning of understanding the truth and rescuing sentient beings. Generally, there are a number of different types of mantras. There are worldly mantras that are used to help one accomplish short-term goals and to grant some specific requests, like many primitive faiths and religions. They all have the tradition of reciting mantras. They use mantras to cure diseases, remove ill fortune, or to pray for rain, etc. Another kind of mantra is the Dharani, which means of essence or to hold. It means of essence or to hold. These mantras, the Dharanis, so the mantra that we're talking about later on is a Dharani. They are generally placed at the end of a sutra. It condenses the essence of the entire sutra, and hence is known as of essence or holding the essence. Each bodhisattva also has his own dharani. So we have different dharanis. We have Avalokiteshvara's dharani. We have Medicine Buddha dharani. So such dharani holds and condenses all of each bodhisattva's aspirations, wisdom, compassion, and other virtues. Hence, it is also something that holds the essence. The mantra in the Heart Sutra belongs to the second type of mantra, and that is the Dharani. It has condensed within it all of the essence of the Heart Sutra's thought. That is why, for beings of high capability with strong meditative concentration and wisdom, the mere hearing of this mantra, Dharani, will make them understand the key to the entire prajna practice. Here the sutra says that the mantra is the mantra of great awareness. It is unsurpassable, it equals the unequaled, and that it utterly pacifies all suffering. Here, the awareness, the great awareness, means prajna. The object of this prajna, this wisdom, is emptiness. It is vast and omnipresent in all phenomena. Hence, such wisdom is also vast and is therefore named great awareness. No other kind of wisdom can surpass the prajna that realizes truth. Therefore, it is called unsurpassable. Unequaled Dharma is emptiness. And so what is equal to that is none other than Buddhahood. Hence, it equals the unequaled. And that is the distinguishing feature or the merit of this mantra. Then what is its effect? It says here that it utterly pacifies all suffering. That is to say, prajna can remove our temporary and ultimate suffering and cut the root of all our suffering. So it pacifies all suffering. So such a mantra stands for what the kind of wisdom and truth that such a mantra stands for is not a falsehood. Hence, it should be known to be truth. Next would be the mantra. The lines, he then uttered the mantra of transcendent wisdom, saying, Teyata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. But for some people, I think over here there's an important point. Some people think that as long as you recite the mantra, you're very great. But, just now we just said, the mantra represents prajna, prajna wisdom. Now, in your mind, if you don't have that kind of prajna, just reciting it, that's nothing great. But some say, I'm reciting the mantra in my mind I feel inspired, it can help. But if you're simply reciting with your mouth, pala pala pala, swaha, then it's useless. Yesterday, in our last 2 lessons, I explained Avalokiteshvara's reply to Shariputra's question. So, an answer that addresses the 5 paths separately. And this can be said that this answer is aimed at beings with lower capability and those who don't have so much wisdom. This mantra, however, answers comprehensively how the Shravakas, the Prachika Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas of the 3 vehicles, how they should train. This method belongs to that for beings of higher capability. So this mantra, according to its Sanskrit version, is pronounced as Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhisoha. It is made up of 6 words. In the past, when translating sutras, translators do not translate some words, but only keep their original phonetic pronunciations. For example, the last time we talked about how if there are too many meanings, then the word is not translated because there are too many meanings and it's very hard to translate. This mantra is the same. The words Gati means to go forward, and Para is the other shore. That is the Para, the 2 words Para in Prajna Paramita. Sam means already. Bodhi is Bodhi, which is Buddhahood. And Soha has many different meanings. Some say it is fast, some say it is perfection. Therefore, the meaning of the entire mantra is go forward, go forward, go forward to the other shore, arrive at the other shore, and quickly attain Buddhahood. There are many different explanations and meanings for the mantra because it has so much meaning. It holds the essence of the entire sutra. Therefore, the meaning and the thinking it holds is also very vast. Besides, it explains the truth of the profound prajna and is hence very profound. But because of the lack of time, we will only give a rough explanation. Tibetan masters in the past all thought that Gati Gati refers to going forward to the realization of a Shravaka. Paragati refers to going forward to the realization of a Prachika Buddha, and the Parasamgati refers to arriving at the Mahayana realization. Some Tibetan masters believe Gate Gate explains the emptiness door of liberation, and Paragati explains the signlessness door of liberation, and Parasamgati explains the wishlessness door of liberation. Wishlessness. Domdeba, and that is a master in the Kadampa, he is a layperson. His hair is very long, it's up to here. So, in a monastery, there is his statue. One day, some people on pilgrimage came along, And the person who is in charge of this statue, so as he is introducing the statue, he says, this is a master of Kadampa. And the person on pilgrimage asks, is that a man or a woman? And the person says, that's a woman, because he thought that the hair is very long, and so he thought that the statue stands for a woman. So men don't have very long hair. Jundumpa believes that Gate Gate explains the path of accumulation, and Paragate explains the path of joining, and Parasamgate explains the path of seeing, and Parasamgate explains the path of cultivation, and Bodhisattva refers to the path of no more learning. Yuance and Fa Zhang, those who translated these sutras, both believe that Gate Gate stands for the spirit of Mahayana, because it doesn't simply mean one goes forward alone, but rather one leads others to go forward. Hence the word Gate is said twice. Gate, Gate. The first Gate is the self going forward. The second Gate is to lead others to go forward. Paragate explains where we are going forward to, and that is the other shore. So it is like a boatsman. The boatsman is just going around from one place to another. The boatsman wouldn't be able to earn money, so it is better that you take some passengers, and then you'd have more benefit. I guess that's what this means. Parasamgate refers the other shore. And what is this other shore? It is Bodhi, which is Buddhahood. So through prajna practice, we're able to quickly arrive at that state, and therefore Soha. Master Hongfa, he brought this Vajrayana to Japan. So he's the master. He thought that the first Gate refers to the practice of Shravakas, and the second Gate refers to the practice of the Prachika Buddha. Paragate refers to the practice of Mahayana. Parasamgate refers to the practice of Vajrayana. And Bodhisattva refers to how all these practices will lead to the perfect awakening. So there arises one question here. Since this is a secret mantra, many masters in the past do not talk about it. Then why did Avalokiteshvara want to speak of it? The mantra is secret, and yet it is spoken about. Isn't that contradictory? In actual fact, so when it comes to secret or secret mantra, there are many different meanings. But over here, secret, the secret here means Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they do not have anything that they want to keep secret. That is to say, that the difference between Theravada and Vajrayana lies in the people and not in their thinking. They share the same thinking, but some understand it while others don't. For those who do not understand it, it becomes something that is secret. So it isn't that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas want to keep it a secret and don't want to tell others. It is not like that. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are just waiting to teach. Sometimes I find Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they're quite pitiful. They're just there, waiting for sentient beings, wanting to benefit sentient beings and to teach them. However, the problem is the main door is closed. And so Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are unable to enter, and so the poor souls are waiting outside. So many a time, I tell many people will come and ask me, "My guru, where is he?" It should be north, south, east, west. But many people just feel frustrated that they cannot find a guru. What should they do? It is like I want to give them his address. It is like they want me to give them the guru's address. Oh, the guru's name is this, his address is this, and his phone number is this. Quick, call the guru. If it is so easy, I would have given you Amitofo's phone number. Amitabha's phone number. Amitabha may not have a phone. Maybe the Bodhisattvas, like Avalokiteshvara, they may have phones and they may have WeChat, and you should actually look for them instead. Actually, I think the problem lies in ourselves, because in our desire for Dharma, it is not correct, or it is not pure. Therefore, we are unable to find a guru, or perhaps we find a guru who isn't one with virtue. And you find a bunch of people with issues as gurus. And they're not really gurus, actually. They're just gurus with issues. But we need to know that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they're always watching sentient beings, just like what I just said just now. They are just waiting outside of our main doors. However, our problem is that we've closed our door. And so we're unable to get in touch with them. If the door of our faith and confidence is open, I'm sure they will rush in. Of course, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will not try to compete with one another for disciples, but I'm pretty sure they will all rush in. So in your desire for Dharma, it has to be accurate, it has to be correct. It shouldn't be too complex. It shouldn't be too strange, too weird. I can say a lot of things now, but I think, forget it. Therefore, this mantra is the same. Those who are able to understand Buddha's meaning just by listening to this mantra should be very few. Very few. Therefore, it is secret. And this is from the perspective of one who sees how difficult it is to understand the message here. So in Vajrayana, it's the same thing. It is not because the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas don't want to give the teachings. It is because beings are unable to understand it. Therefore, there's no choice. Or it is not just that the beings are unable to understand it, but they may misunderstand it. And so it is best not to speak about it, not to teach. It isn't because the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas want to keep it a secret and there is a Dharma teaching that they want to keep for themselves. They don't want to give it to sentient beings. It's not like that. The next line, Shariputra, Bodhisattva, Mahasattva should practice profound transcendent wisdom in that way. This line finally concludes Avalokiteshvara's answer. He sums up completely how beings of higher or lower capabilities should practice. And now we go on to the 7th part, which is the aspect of distribution. The 7th and the 8th part both belong to the aspect of distribution. So now comes the 7th part, which is an explanation that follows and that belongs to the aspect of distribution. And the line goes, then the Bhagavan arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, excellent, he said, excellent, excellent, son of noble family, it is so, it is so. Profound transcendent wisdom is to be practiced just as you have taught. The Tathagatas will rejoice. So in the explanation that follows, there are two parts. The first part is there the Bhagavan arose from the samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, excellent, excellent. In this part, it is our master, that is Buddha Shakyamuni, who supports what Avalokiteshvara said, and Buddha tells him, it is so, it is so. The 5 paths of bodhisattvas should be practiced just as you, Avalokiteshvara, have taught. So the 5 paths of the bodhisattvas should be practiced exactly like what you, Avalokiteshvara, have taught. It is accurate. It is very accurate. Bodhisattvas should practice the way you have taught. So over here, this is the explanation that follows on the prajna, and that is Buddha Shakyamuni supports what Avalokiteshvara had said. The second part is the Tathagatas will rejoice. This shows that not just Buddha Shakyamuni, but the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas also support what Avalokiteshvara said. Next, the 8th part, rejoice. The 8th part, which is the last part, is rejoice. When the Bhagavan said that the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, that entire retinue and the world with its devas, humans, asuras, what? And Gandharvas. Ganta, it should be pronounced as Ganta. Rejoiced, all praised what the Bhagavan had said. Because this entire sutra is spoken based on Buddha's blessings. Hence, what comes after the phrase when the Bhagavan said that? After that, Shariputra and the rest of the congregation led by Avalokiteshvara, the shared question, the common question that they had, they all got an answer for that. And so they all rejoiced and praised what the Bhagavan had said. And so that concludes the Heart Sutra. Actually, we had wanted to. I should have practiced way much earlier. But when I was in the Shami, I was very busy, and I didn't have the time. So actually, we had wanted So I had to prepare in the last minute, and every time it is like that. So, although the preparation is kind of rushed, but with the help of many people, we have concluded this. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have helped me, all the great masters who have helped me, the 4 great masters. Now there aren't only 4 great masters, there's another one, so there are 5 great masters. Of course, tonight, I'd also like to share with you some thoughts. And I'll share with you some of my thoughts and feelings. I'll tell you then. So, this is it. Thank you. Wait, hang on. It hasn't concluded yet. Next is the refuge vow. You take refuge with the 3 jewels, not with me. So when you take refuge with the 3 jewels, you receive the refuge vows. Usually, there will be refuge vow, and that taking refuge and taking refuge vows, there's a little bit of a difference between the two. Taking refuge vow it is taking a vow. So taking a refuge vow, you need to take a vow and to keep to certain rules. If it is just taking refuge, then there's nothing much. There aren't any rules per se. Why are there rules? Because you have made a vow. And you've got to maintain the vow. And to maintain such a vow, such a promise, to help you maintain such a promise, you have to keep yourself away from certain things. So you've got to receive some rules and keep to the rules. But for some people, in their mind, they're not quite prepared. So when we talk about certain precepts, then they get scared. But you need to know that first it is a vow. Then there are the rules. It is not rules first and then the vow. It shouldn't be reversed in this way. Therefore, so you've got to consider it more deeply. So now recite after me. What I recite is something quite simple. I'm a very lazy person, so I wouldn't recite something that is very, 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 very traditional and a long kind of refuge vow. And so many people want to take the refuge vow, so I'm unable to do so. So this is how it is today.
现在应该真的结束了，
Now this should
应该真的
really
结束
conclude
的呀。
the class.
大众请起。
Please rise.